Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on financial education and match savings for affordable housing residents. My name is Maya Brennan, and I'm with the National Housing Conference. I'm joined on this webinar by Emily Appel-Newby of the AFI Resource Center and Maya Abood of the California Coalition for Rural Housing. So, this may be the first time, this is certainly the first time I've been on a webinar with two Mayas, so as it comes to questions for us, please feel free to note us as Maya A for Maya Abood of California Coalition for Rural Housing, or Maya B for myself. A little bit about housekeeping before we get started. You should all see a GoToWebinar control panel on the right of your screen. And in that, towards the bottom, there's an area for you to type in questions. You can feel free to write questions for any of us throughout the webinar. And we will address all of those questions in bulk at the end, unless it's something that seems to need more immediate attention. You can also use the questions or even the chat box below to address any technical concerns. So the sound is breaking up. There's a glitch with some slides, and any of those sorts of issues. You can address them there as well, and we will strive to fix them to the best of our ability. After the webinar is over, we'll have a recording. That's a frequent question that comes up. So we are recording this webinar, and we will provide a link to that recording to everyone who registered or attended after the fact. And you'll also find a number of resources here within the slides for you that you may want to access afterwards. And we'll also include information about any of those in that thank you message. So now that that basic welcome and housekeeping is out of the way, let's think a little bit about content. So at the National Housing Conference, one of the topics that I focus on is asset building and economic security issues as they relate to affordable housing. The National Housing Conference does work around low and moderate income housing. We are a nonprofit membership organization that has members spanning public housing authorities, nonprofit and for-profit affordable housing developers, advocates, and others. And our work always strives to be very relevant to policy and practice, whether it's from the communications, the research side where I am, or our policy side. So I'm going to provide a very brief overview for you of a paper that's called More Than a Roof. This is a paper that you can find on the National Housing Conference website. I would also like to express my thanks to the Annie E. Casey Foundation, who supported the work that I'll be talking about that is described in that paper. The paper's focus is really on public housing authorities and what they can do, but the lessons really almost always apply also to other types of affordable housing as well. So this should be of general relevance. The first perspective that you're going to see on the slide here that I want to think about economic security issues from is the resident's perspective. Affordable housing is occupied by low-income, sometimes moderate-income, but often low-income residents. And for public housing and voucher assistance, typically these are very low-income people, the working poor. They clearly need to boost their economic security, but what we've found and learned over time is that they want to boost their economic security as well. These residents are mostly have employment income unless they're elderly or disabled, and therefore not considered in that work-able population. Their average income is less than $13,000 a year, and that's less than the poverty line for a household of two. So you can see we're talking about some quite low incomes. And financial coaches and poverty alleviation organizations typically report that residents have aspirations of self-sufficiency, hope to one day move out of assisted housing, but that this aspiration gets muddled with their fear of losing their safety net. That waiting lists for housing assistance are often over a year or they're closed, and so the repercussions of losing that assistance are pretty strong, as well as of losing other help from safety net programs. Now, let's also think about the housing provider's perspective. From what we find, economic security programs don't just benefit the residents of affordable housing, they also benefit the housing providers themselves. In an era of cost containment and tight budgets, added programming is often met with great skepticism. People generally wonder how they're going to get the funding to do it and what the impact is going to be on their programming, and don't feel comfortable or capable of adding something on, making a commitment to something that might not fit with their existing skill set. So how are you going to staff it? How are you going to fund it? What is the impact going to be? Well, the financial skills that residents get from participating in the types of economic security programs that we'll talk about here, and the savings buffer that they get from that can mean a reduction in problems related to non-payment of rent and bad debt. That has a clear benefit to housing providers' bottom line. And over time, some residents will also meet their self-sufficiency goals and exit assistance. This means that you can serve more families on the waiting list, which is clearly a benefit and a way that you often judge your success. Also, there's a more difficult to quantify benefit, but one that we hear fairly often, that there is a culture of striving and goal setting and achievement that comes as more and more residents become engaged in these sorts of programs. So what models exist for an affordable housing provider who wants to offer economic security programming? This slide gives you a very, very quick glimpse of 4 major programs. The first 2, individual development accounts or IDAs and earned income tax credit assistance and outreach. They are programs that are widely available to all nonprofit affordable housing providers, public housing authorities, and others. The second 2 are only available through public housing authorities themselves, family self-sufficiency and voucher assistance. A very quick touch on what each of these are would probably be useful, but please feel free to contact me or look at More Than a Roof for a lot more information on each of these approaches. Individual development accounts or IDAs, they're going to be the focus of most of what you'll hear in this webinar, so I will touch on them very briefly. An IDA basically provides financial literacy training and a matched savings account for residents. It's a great tool for boosting residents' savings and their capacity to budget and save despite low incomes. Earned income tax credit assistance is something that is tremendously relevant right now as you get into tax time. Instead of having the costs associated with refund anticipation loans and other paid tax assistance, residents of affordable housing are typically eligible for free tax assistance through volunteer income tax assistance programs and refundable credits, especially for those working or with children. These are refundable credits that in some cases, particularly with the EITC or Earned Income Tax Credit, residents could get back as much as a full month of pay in this refundable tax credit. So it's a huge amount of money that we don't want to have them leave on the table. What's the role of a housing provider, though, in that? Well, housing providers have frequent contact with residents, and if you're in a multifamily setting, there are typically community newsletters or other boards and other ways, either through mailings or that sort of on-site approach of bringing information about these programs to light. There are often other organizations in your community that are trying to get a population who's eligible into these volunteer tax assistance programs, and they'd be more than thrilled to have your partnership to get the information out to your residents. For the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, its a program that both provides an incentive to boost earnings and increase income. One of the challenges that that affordable housing residents face in thinking about earning more is that every dollar that they earn becomes part of an increase in their rent. 30% of household income is going to go to rent when you're in a voucher or a public housing program, typically. Family self-sufficiency, when people sign up for that program, they get case management and planning as well as an escrow account so that any increase in earnings that leads to an increase in rent goes into a savings account that they can access upon graduation or other needs in advance. This is a great tool to get over that fear of higher expenses and of exiting assistance programs. It can also be paired well with some of these other approaches so that you get the savings benefits also of savings accounts that you develop through IDAs, and you get the extra money back through earned income tax credits. Voucher homeownership, the last on this list, I'm going to just touch on very briefly. For housing authorities that operate a voucher program, most operate the voucher for rental assistance, but there is a voucher homeownership program that if you've amassed savings through either participation in FSS or an individual development account, you can use that for a down payment towards the home, but still use your voucher to assist with the ongoing monthly costs for a period of up to 15 years. During that span of time, people are at the point where they're making economic strides before they enter the program. One would think that they will be able to have made enough strides to get out of needing the voucher assistance for their homeownership costs. So this can be a really good way if you're in a relatively affordable market and the resident appears to be near ready for market rate homeownership to help with that last boost to get over the edge there. So that's your very quick summary of these programs. In More Than a Roof, you can find examples and a lot more information about each of these and case studies of public housing authorities that have been involved in all of these approaches. So once you've decided that you want to offer an economic security program, how do you actually make it a success? You can engage in these sort of win-win partnerships to provide services. There are lots of other groups out there that have financial literacy expertise and are providing case management services to your clients, and they're otherwise poised to work with you. So find them and be open to those opportunities. Funding opportunities are also available if you seek them. Some are for nonprofits only, so if you don't have nonprofit status, you can use another partner, like if you have a resident association that has nonprofit status, or another partner in the community to increase your eligibility there. You can also explore case studies to learn how others overcame their challenges, and some of those are in More Than a Roof. And the final point that I want to make is that success is really stronger with layered programs, and the fixed costs that you would have of financial literacy and case management don't really change whether you're adding financial literacy for an IDA program and an FSS program and for helping families get ready for voucher homeownership. So you can maximize your efforts on that fixed cost and maximize your opportunities for funding and savings and success by considering layered approaches that may include EIT assistance to make sure that their tax money doesn't go out the window and other costs, IDAs to help with savings, FSS if you're a housing authority to help overcome residents' earnings fears, and as families get ready to transition off assistance in some markets, voucher homeownership as well. So that is your very quick overview of More Than a Roof. You can access it at nhc.org and find additional information and case studies from a variety of places. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Emily to go into a lot more detail on the main topic of the webinar, which is IDAs. Emily?
Thanks so much, Maya. I learned a lot about the housing field from your presentation and from reviewing the report because I know a little bit about it from having worked with AFI grantees and IDA programs that are operating family self-sufficiency programs and voucher home ownership programs and earned income tax assistance outreach and VITA sites. What you're saying is so true about how all these different approaches can work together. And I want to tell you in particular about the IDA approach today and about the funding that's available on the federal level from the Department of Health and Human Services. At the Office of Community Services, they have a program called the Assets for Independence program that supports IDAs, new IDA programs across the country. This is not funding that's specifically targeted at affordable housing organizations, but 501c3s and public agencies and some other types of entities are all eligible to apply for funding to help with starting an IDA program. So I wanted to share AFI's model of an IDA with you in case this seems like something you want to pursue at your agency. And then I invited, as I mentioned before, I invited the California Coalition for Rural Housing to come and talk about specifically their AFI-funded IDA program and how they use it to promote home ownership. Now, when I was putting together this presentation, I'll get to that in a minute. So I want to talk about the AFI's approach, the AFI program's approach to poverty alleviation and why it is that we look at things from an asset building lens. The OCS believes that it's not just about increasing someone's income on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis, but also helping them build assets and starting small and then building on small successes towards longer-term goals that are really going to make a difference in terms of building financial security for an individual and a family. A good first place to start would be savings of 3 to 6 months worth of income to protect against the loss of a job. So that's kind of a private safety net that someone might have to fall back on. And then as households are able to move beyond paying bills paycheck to paycheck, they're able to start thinking about long-term financial stability. They're able to start thinking about savings and creating a nest egg for investment. And that's really where IDAs come in, individual development accounts, with the idea that you can fund larger asset purchases, and we'll talk about that. And then these larger asset purchases, asset ownership in terms of owning a home, having a higher education degree or a job training certificate, or owning a small business, is associated with a host of positive outcomes for the individual and the family. Stronger, healthier families, enhanced self-esteem from taking from the self-confidence and taking control of one's finances, longer-term thinking and planning, and then higher levels of community involvement. Of course, if you think about a homeowner, would probably be more involved in the local government than maybe a renter who is not going to be there for as long. So that's why AFI takes the asset-building approach to building economic security. So the way that OCS does that is they provide 5-year grants to organizations that work with low-income people in their community to help them learn about financial and consumer issues and save in these special match savings accounts called IDAs. And the goal for those individuals is to help them become more self-sufficient and help them invest in assets. So as I talked about, a first home, higher education or training, or small business. And so when I was thinking about putting together this presentation, I had been thinking that home ownership would be the dominant goal among the clients that the agencies on this call would be working towards. But as I listened again to Maya's presentation, I realized that because the goal here is self-sufficiency, even though you're housing organizations, the answer is not necessarily home ownership. It could be higher education or job training to help people who are already working move up the next rung in their career ladder. And that's something that an IDA could be used for. Or helping them start a small business if they have an idea for a service or a product that's needed in their community. And that's going to be a ticket to employment for themselves and maybe for family members. That's also going to help them achieve self-sufficiency and would be in the interest of of an affordable housing provider. So, so I have included references here to homeownership work, but I want to throw out there that IDAs can be used to help people invest in their self-sufficiency across a variety of different pathways. And so as a result of the funding that the AFI program has done for the field since 1999 when it got started, there are more than 350 organizations throughout the nation that are operating IDA programs with funding from AFI. And as you can see on this slide, they are different types of agencies. But in terms of affordable housing organizations, we definitely have a couple housing authorities, and we have a couple we have more than a couple community development corporations who are also developers, and then other types of housing agencies that are nonprofits primarily. So we've been referring to this match savings account, individual development account, and it's somewhat a well-known product, but I want to take a step back and make sure that everyone understands the details of how it can work. So I've put up a slide with an example of a participant named Vicki who wants to own her own home, and so she found that an agency that she works with to help her access affordable housing also has an IDA program that can help her buy a home. They offer a match rate of 2 to 1. And so Vicki takes a financial education class and looks at her budget, and together with the IDA, the case manager, they figure out that she can reach the $2,000 savings goal. She saves $55 a month over 3 years. In the meantime, during that 3 years, she's going to be taking more financial counseling, probably going to be working on credit to be mortgage ready, and then a home buyer club to make sure she understands how to take out a safe and effective mortgage, how to make a wise choice with how much home she could afford, things like that. So she's going to save her $2,000. She'll receive $4,000 of matching from the IDA program, and she's going to have a total of $6,000 to invest in her down payment and closing costs. But like what Maya was referring to with layering programs, we do believe that that's very important for any IDA program to leverage other sources of down payment assistance, or really any other sources of assistance for any of the asset purchases, because we know that every little bit helps, and every small amount that they're putting in as equity is less that they're going to be borrowing. And so the agency that Vicki is, our example saver Vicki is working with, was able to help her apply for $2,500 of additional homeownership assistance that she was able to layer on top of that, so she had a total of $8,500 to spend. So that shows how the AFI IDA works, and how you would often want to layer it with other sources of assistance. So a little bit about that training and support that Vicki received while she was saving. So there's a requirement that IDA savers take financial education classes, as well as asset-specific training, so training related to whichever asset they're going to invest in. There's not a requirement that the grantee itself be the provider of these training and education, but they can also partner with an organization. So as Maya was saying, if you can find a community partner that could be a community partner that would be willing to offer these types of trainings, then that would be one way. But I assume probably a lot of you have homeownership training programs that you run already. As well, you probably also have some infrastructure for case management, which is an important part of an IDA program, simply because the reason why IDAs were created was to develop a new habit, a new behavior of savings and making these monthly deposits for the populations that AFI is targeting. And so the incentive, the matching funds is an incentive to changing that behavior. But in addition, the case management and knowing that there's someone there to talk to and to help hold you accountable to your own goals is another important part of it. We know that this approach does work because of the track record of the AFI project. Over 80,000 people have saved over $76 million participating in the AFI program so far, and more than 30,000 have purchased assets. Many of these participants, and we believe that I believe that the track record that AFI has had is with clients who are similar to the ones that you're serving. Many of them are single-parent households, and the IDA is the first savings account for about half of our participants. So they are often underbanked or unbanked and are new to this, again, savings behavior. To give you an idea of which programs, I have to say this is pretty much, in my opinion, are going to be the most successful. What's a good place to start from when you're thinking about building an IDA program? Is your mission related to developing these assets in asset development and helping people achieve financial security, which I know for all of you it is. So you can build onto that, as Maya said, by layering the IDA on top of that. Another important part is that you have some way to offer case management, so some kind of ongoing support. And then it's also helpful to be able to layer in other types of asset building services to help people be as financially savvy as they possibly can be. So the financial education, which is a required component, of course, and then the tax credits and filing assistance around the EITC that Maya mentioned. It can be a powerful way to increase someone's budget by, I think, up to 45%, the maximum credit for the EITC for the lowest income households. Something like increases their income by 45%. So that is such a boost to one's finances. And then, of course, learning how to manage your credit and debt, access to safe and mainstream banking services, and, of course, accessing federal and state benefits that will help stretch your budget even further. And then, of course, the IDA product, the goals that you can save for have to have alignment with your client's desires. So you have to, this would only be relevant for clients who are interested in pursuing home ownership, small business development, or higher education or job training, and that otherwise their specific asset purchase goals fits in with the allowable uses of the IDA funds according to AFI guidelines. And so I'm not going to read through those now, but I've included them here in the slides so that you can look at them in more detail on your own across all three of the allowable uses. And so the benefits for housing providers, we talked about the mission alignment. Maya pointed out how the financial education and the developing the savings behavior helps them build budgeting skills and increase savings. It's also that's a meaningful skill for employers. Basically, employees who are less stressed about their finances and better able to manage their finances are probably going to perform better and have better continuity with their employment, which again is going to have positive returns in terms of their housing stability. What I've heard from the public housing authorities who run AFI IDA programs is that they value how the IDA breaks through the cycle of intergenerational poverty by when a parent takes control of their finances. The children learn by example because they see the value of saving and long-term planning and how it made a difference, and therefore those skills and those values are passed on. In addition, the value to housing providers of the individual asset purchases, obviously transfer taxes, things like that, that happen when someone purchases an asset are going to go back and help the local economy and the local and state governments, and so which is is a source of funding for the work that we all do. And then if any of you are also developers, it's important to note that an IDA program helps create a pipeline of low-income buyers who are going to be there to make sure that there's stable and ready demand for any affordable housing projects that you put together. People who are mortgage ready to qualify for mortgages so that when you have, as a developer, when you've created a project, there's someone there to buy it in the end. And so for more about perspective, I'm going to hand it over to Maya from the California Coalition for Rural Housing. And before I do that, though, I want to point out that that CCRH's model is just one model of how an affordable housing provider can operate an IDA program with a sweat equity model. But there are definitely other models in terms of different types of agencies can run IDA programs that look differently, and you would be able to see more about that on our website. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Maya.
Are my slides going to come up? Oh, there they are. Wonderful. So thank you, Emily. As Emily said, my name is Maya Abood. I'm from California Coalition for Rural Housing. And California Coalition for Rural Housing, or CCRH, is a statewide association of nonprofit affordable housing developers, also public housing authorities, and advocates that support the development of affordable rural housing. So with that, let's get started. There we go. So kind of how we came to set up our asset building program and our IDA program, we have historically had a commitment to providing economic and social opportunities for low-income families. That's really at the heart of our mission. And we realized that rural areas did not have many IDA or asset building programs. And this was particularly concerning for all the reasons that Emily talked about in terms of building wealth for families, stabilizing communities. But we also knew that rural areas, cities, and nonprofits that work in them typically are smaller organizations, have less time and capacity to learn new things or implement new programs. And so we wanted to make sure that we created a model that would work for the communities that we serve and not create an undue burden for our affordable housing developers or cities and communities in rural areas. So we came up with this concept of doing a network IDA program. And the network IDA program allowed us to kind of be the hub and do all the reporting and communication with HHS and pass that money on to organizations on the ground. And they are the ones that are carrying out the IDA programs, talking to the families, making sure the families are getting financial literacy, and really serving as the face while we're doing most of the administration work. And the reason why that worked so well is because our organizations were able to kind of implement this on a micro level. So some of the organizations that are currently in our IDA program are enrolling 5, 7 families, and they're able to do that because we have a network of other organizations that are also kind of working on that micro level, and we're making sure that there's the economy of scale that justifies some of the hassle of reporting and dealing with a federal grant. So that's kind of our model, and we've gone through a process of trial and error with our IDAs. So we've applied for 2 AFI grants for a total of $625,000. And the first AFI grant was nonprofit affordable housing developers and advocacy organizations working in rural areas to do any kind of asset building purchase. So we had organizations that had families save for educational purchases or homeownership or small businesses, whatever families wanted to save for, they were allowed to. But again, with that network model. And in AFI 2, which is what we are currently doing, we decided to focus much more on down payment assistance. And our hope was to leverage some of the local home and CDBG funds that rural communities had in order to provide the match funding required for down payment assistance. And to some extent, that worked. We currently have 4 small rural governments that are participating in that program and matching homeowner savings with CDBG dollars. We were hoping to have 13, but as the federal government kind of scaled back CDBG and home funding, and as redevelopment was dissolved in California, local jurisdictions had much fewer resources to implement all of their housing and community development programs. And also we found that local governments don't always have the ability to communicate what this program is about and to get trust from local residents. So residents might find the program too good to be true, and with the amount of fraud that was happening, particularly around foreclosures and some subprime lending, homeowners or families that would want to buy a home were particularly hesitant to enroll in programs that seemed too good to be true. So I'm going to talk about one of the ways that we got through some of those barriers and the model that seemed to work best for us. Slides. Here we go. As we started our program, as I mentioned, we're really focused on organizations that put rural families, low-income families at the heart of their mission, and we're focused on stabilizing families and low-income residents. And for us, this was kind of a no-brainer. Why there was a need for asset building. Many of our affordable housing developers had already stabilized the housing costs for people, and so people were more able to think about major purchases. That was under AFI 1. And then AFI 2, a lot of our organizations are really well respected in the community. They have a relationship of trust with local residents, and so they're able to break through some of that too good to be true hesitancy. Next slide. All right. So the model that I'm going to talk about is a partnership primarily between us, California Coalition for Rural Housing, and one of our members, Self-Help Enterprises. Self-Help Enterprises is a nonprofit affordable housing developer that primarily focuses on self-help housing, although they do some other kinds of housing as well. They do sewer and water development, and they also manage various jurisdictions, CDBG and home funds, which allowed them to have greater access to jurisdictions and more accessibility to match funding. Slide. And self-help uses the model of mutual self-help housing, which I think is really key to the implementation and success of our IDA program. Mutual self-help housing, as opposed to some self-help housing, or Habitat for Humanity kind of model where it's just one house at a time, mutual self-help housing looks at developing housing with sweat equity, but as groups. So 8 to 12 residents will enroll as a group, and they'll spend the entire year building each other's houses, not just their own houses. So it develops a camaraderie. There's a lot of trust that's developed. All of these families are enrolled in programs that assist with budgeting, assist in understanding how to make repairs to houses. And so it's kind of, in essence, going through an entire cohort, or developing a cohort with other families and going through an entire program together. And the relationship of trust that's formed with the organization, in this case Self-Help Enterprises, is very meaningful. Next slide. All right, can we switch slides? There you go. So how it works with our IDA program, as I mentioned, it's a network program, so CCRH will request the money from HHS and then give it over to Self-Help Enterprises. Self-Help Enterprises is SHE for short. SHE matches those non-federal funds with their own match dollars, and for every $1,000, they have a 3-to-1 savings program. So for every $1,000 that a participant saves, the program matches $3,000. So what we see is, by the time families have constructed their homes together and they're ready to make that down payment, they have $4,000 that they normally wouldn't have had. So it makes a huge difference in that final step of sweat equity, which is the down payment. Next. And so just quickly, I'm not going to spend too much time, but the eligibility both for the sweat equity model and for the IDA is they're a first-time home buyer, they have a social security number, over 18, have earned income. And we won't talk too much about the income limits, but it's important to know that they're there, and that they go through the financial literacy training. And that's also true for the self-help model. So the families are already going through these models. Self-help enterprises are already really accustomed to providing them. Next. So this just quickly is the income limits. I won't spend too much time on that. And just as I said, we really think that this is a perfect fit because these families are already enrolling in a program that requires them to save and to go through regular training, and they're really making that commitment. We've seen in other models that families may not be sure whether or not they're ready to make a housing purchase, and so they're putting the money in the IDA program, but if something comes up, they may have to do an emergency withdrawal. Self-help families have already decided that this is a commitment. They're building the house themselves, and so there's, in essence, very little turning back. Next. And again, kind of this is just looking more at the model of how do you provide training as a group. I won't spend too much time, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask me later. Next. And as we were talking about, we provide self-help housing provides financial literacy training, and really importantly, what Emily was talking about earlier, there's a lot of the savings comes from the Earned Income Tax Credit Program, and self-help housing and CCRH have historically provided those trainings. That's where a bulk of the savers' money comes from. Next. So just kind of quickly going through the process, if the families that decide they want to do self-help housing, enroll in the program, they're notified of IDA benefits, and they begin to construct their home. I'm running out of time, so I'll go quickly. They begin to construct their home. They're able to open an IDA account, and then their IDA has sufficient savings right in time for the closing costs of that home. So it all kind of syncs in timeline together. Again, families generally save for 8 months. They save on average a little less than $1,000, and they're matched with a little less than $3,000. In general, you know, the target is about $4,000 at the end of this that can be used for down payment assistance. And what we've seen is close to $90,000 total in aggregate closing costs, and 25 homes just in AFI 2. AFI 1 had additional homes purchased. And currently there's 10 more families enrolled. We're bumping up that number, but right now there's 10 that are enrolled in receiving all the financial literacy and in the process of building their homes. Next. So a little bit about kind of the challenges we've seen in implementing this. It does take a significant amount of time, both from our end and from our members' end, self-help housing's end. Admin costs are not the main funding for this program. Most of the money goes into the hands of low-income families, which is an amazing program, but there's not a lot of support for administration. There really has to be a commitment from the organization to make this work in any way possible. And what we've seen is while my admin time and the admin time of the local partners isn't compensated sufficiently, we've been able to leverage the money that we do get from HHS and seek other funding sources. So banks have been a really great funder of the IDA program. Developing affordable housing is really expensive for banks. Large multifamily housing development is going to cost them a lot of money, but in comparison, funding an IDA program that's going to get people into houses on a more micro level is really attractive to them and really financially feasible. And so that's kind of how we've compensated for that. And like I said, every local jurisdiction has to have the matching funds to match the saver's income. And that's been a challenge. But as I mentioned, there's funding sources to help with that, either CDBG and home funds at the local level, or private investment or philanthropy. But more than anything, there needs to be the commitment of local partners. Admin time and money is a barrier that's surpassable if there's the commitment to do it. And if there's that trust in the community that I think is so key in making this program work. I think that is, next slide, we'll just talk about what the payoff is if you take on the challenge. You're giving people homes for life, and in the process they have the skills to save and budget. And with the self-help model, they know how to repair and maintain their homes so they stay in good condition. And there's a real sense of pride and community that results from this. And that's my contact information. But feel free to ask questions. We'll have some time at the end of this to have a more detailed conversation.
Thank you so much, Maya. I really appreciate it. I learned something. I love being able to invite grantees in to join me on these presentations because I learned something new about what AFI projects look like on the ground every time. So I just wanted to take a quick step back and give my little pitch for the AFI funding opportunity. If you think that IDAs might be a model that for building economic self-security, self-sufficiency for your residents that would work for you, to let you know that AFI is going to very soon release a funding opportunity announcement for 2014, and grant funds of up to $1 million per project would be available. Because we have your contact information, your email addresses, I'll just go ahead and you will receive notification when the 2014 funding opportunity announcement has been released. And there are many more resources available on the website of the Assets for Independence program that can help you explore how to build a strong AFI program. But then also, if you like the idea of IDAs, but you don't think that you're interested in getting a grant to start your own project, you may be able to find a project near you. So you can use this link onto our website to find projects that you could work with. And they will probably want to partner with you if they have available slots in their program, because you can bring a couple things to them. You'll bring a source of eligible participants. Perhaps the case management that you provide to those participants will only augment and supplement the case management that they do. And then also, if you can come with some sources of financial support to help with the non-federal cash contribution, I'm sure that would always be appreciated as well. So you should definitely explore it if there are AFI grantees in your geographical area. And here is the contact information for the AFI Resource Center in case you would like to follow up with us with any questions about the funding. And I'm going to turn it back to Maya Brennan now to moderate the Q&A.
Thanks, Emily. So we've had a couple of great questions come in. One was about AFI grants. So Emily, you caught that one already. Another was about how you would find an organization looking for housing partners for financial education. And this particular question was around Northern Virginia, but I think it's a broadly applicable question. Emily, do you have any thoughts around finding these sort of financial education partners? It seems the AFI Resource Center and that list could be a good start.
Yeah, I really do think that could be a good start, because we know that anybody who's offering AFI IDAs does have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with financial education. So if you can find an AFI grantee in your area, they would be good ones to know that. We
also have a question about how you would reach college students or recent graduates and try to help them both prepare for homeownership and get ahead on student loans. Do you know of any programs that are specifically reaching that audience?
Let me think broadly about that specific audience. I'm more. I have to say, I'm more coming at it from the IDA point of view, and I can say that there are many projects that would serve those types of individuals in that population, but I can't think of any specific federal programs that are specifically targeted at that population.
Right. So a lot of programs, it's really about outreach and trying to get the message out to the right folks. And there was one organization that's actually housing authority that we have a case study of in More Than a Roof. The San Diego Housing Commission has an AFI-funded IDA. They also have a locally created youth IDA that tried to focus on building financial literacy among the children of their initial IDA participants, because they found that that there was this multi-generational effect, and they could potentially capitalize on that even more by trying to help build that savings pattern earlier. So that could be a good tool to look for, although that is reaching a little bit younger than the college student and recent graduate audience. All of the information here, by the way, we had some questions about getting a copy of the PowerPoint and reviewing some of the information from it again. All of this is going to be available. We'll archive the recording and have the PowerPoint available and links to other resources. They'll all be emailed to the webinar registrants within a few days. We just need to get everything up on the website afterwards. In the meantime, if you have questions that we don't manage to get through in this time, you can contact any of us directly, or you can use an email address that I'll read very slowly to provide general questions and comments. That email address is chp-feedback@nhc.org. It's again chp-feedback@nhc.org. That email address will reach me and others at the National Housing Conference, and we can pass messages along to Emily or to Maya A. if there are questions that go out to them specifically. So we had a question about other housing authorities that were grantees, and I know that the San Diego Housing Commission has been an AFI grantee. Emily, do you recall offhand any of the others, or should folks look to that AFI grantee link that you had provided?
Well, those links are by state, so it would take a while to find them. I know there are at least 2 in Oregon, one in a more rural area and one in a more urban area, housing authorities that are sub-grantees of a network project. Those are the people that I've talked to. Those are the ones that I can, and then I think also Philadelphia Housing Authority has had one in the past. But if you want to send me an email, I can run the full report for you and get a complete list.
Fantastic. So, Maya, we had a question about how housing organizations can get their non-federal match. Can you talk a little bit about how that worked in your case?
Sure. So for us, a lot of that money comes from banks, the community reinvestment side of banks. We also have some other philanthropic foundation support for our work. And then on the ground, a lot of organizations will have reserve funds that they'll commit to this, or local jurisdictions will use their local CDBG or home dollars as well for match. That's kind of what we've seen. But it's, I think, a really marketable program. It takes some effort to market it, but the idea of stabilizing homes, getting permanent residents that are going to care for the community and develop financial security and know how to budget is really appealing to a lot of different funding sources.
And,
yeah,
and this
I know
is
I had
definitely,
heard. Go ahead.
And the other thing that I would toss in about marketing messaging that you can use with potential funders is really, it's, you know, all those groups that Maya talked with, anyone who would otherwise want to fund down payment assistance programs for low-income home buyers. And then you can sweeten the deal for them by telling them that their contribution will be doubled, because their contribution will allow your organization to leverage an equal amount of federal funding through the AFI program. So that's how you can talk about how their funding will have increased impact through by being part of an AFI program.
And we've also found, you know, fairly often housing authorities and affordable housing developers are used to their typical stream of funding sources, and don't, especially on the housing authority side, don't think too much about the financial services community and about the foundation community as seeing a value in their work. They think of themselves as providing a publicly funded service. They think of themselves as in some ways an extension of the government safety net, which is certainly a role that they play. But when you think about it from the foundation side or from the financial institution side, these are organizations that are always trying to find leverage and find programs that help work, that help, as Emily was talking about, create a pipeline of future buyers for affordable homeownership programs, or create future savers and future folks who would need to be banked, and getting access to that sort of leverage that you can get if you have an AFI grant, or if, in the case of a housing authority, you create an FSS program. Being able to pile onto that and get all of that extra money, that extra incentive that is so hard for others to get, but so available to AFI grantees and so available to housing authorities, is a tremendous, tremendous boost. So you should all certainly, if you're in that boat, think of yourselves as having a tremendous asset that partners would be more than happy to provide services to help you get that, in exchange for them just, you know, if all they have to do is provide the funding for case management or the funding for administration or the funding for some services, but you are the source of part of the incentive, it's a tremendous win. It looks like that's about run through our questions, which is good because we're also right about at the end of time. Emily or Maya, do either of you have anything else that you wanted to share before I close us out?
Well, I did want to ask Maya about, as a network project, I understand that Self-Help Enterprises is one of your sub-grantee partners. Could you just run through the types of agencies that your other sub-grantee partners are, just so our audience here has a better understanding of the variety of types of affordable housing providers that can operate IDA programs?
Sure. So under AFI 1, we had quite a hodgepodge of local groups, because again, that was focused on any kind of asset building purchase, education, homeownership, small business. And we had a range of affordable housing developers, kind of urban and rural, or some that developed in urban areas, and also advocacy organizations, so California Rural Legal Assistance, which is not traditionally a service provider or a housing developer, had an IDA program to help some of the families that they saw in their legal clinic. And that was a really powerful partnership. And then under this AFI program, now that we're really focused on self-help housing, we have Self-Help Enterprises, Coachella Valley Housing Authority, or Coachella Valley Housing Corporation. All the different acronyms are so many. People Self-Help Housing, which is in Southern California. And then we have another program, Visionary Home Builders, which is out of Stockton, which is particularly hit by the foreclosure crisis. And they're doing a new program. They got some REO properties donated by the city, and they're using this to help get families into those REO properties. So there's a variety of different models out there.
Great, thank you. That was my burning question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. It seems like there are lots of great models, lots of great ideas for partnership, and way more to be able to go through. So hopefully, everyone who has additional questions can either use the email that you see up on the screen there, if it's about AFI and IDAs, info@idaresources.org, or for your more general questions for either of the Mayas, you can use the chp-feedback@nhc.org with your questions and comments. So thanks so much to both Maya Abood and Emily Appel-Newby for this really informative and engaging webinar. Stay tuned for other webinars and resources for the affordable housing community by connecting with us at nhc.org, or to connect with us in person. Mark your calendars for November 18th to 20th and join us in Oakland, California at the 2014 Solutions Conference. All the information from the webinar, the recording, as well as slide deck for those who were interested in accessing it that way, and other resources will be available for you all afterwards. So